Welcome to the Student Athlete Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Lemke. Today, I'm really excited to have Don Williams with us. So, Don is the head of operations for the Americas at Sports Recruiting USA, and he also has over 30 years of experience in coaching at various levels of soccer. I've been following Don on Twitter, especially for a while now, and he is spitting facts every single day about the recruiting process and about just being an elite athlete in general. And so I'm really excited to bring him on. Even if you're not a soccer player, you guys should be listening to this kind of stuff because a lot of what he talks about applies to every athlete. And so I'm really excited to have Don on the show today. So Don, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Nick. Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So let's first just dig into your background in coaching and in the recruiting process too.
Yeah, I've been coaching since 1989, I guess. And I've coached, I guess, at every level in the country, from men's pro on down to the college game. I coached NCAA D2, D3, NAIA, coached junior college, coached men and women in college, and then I've coached at the youth levels from 4-year-olds on up to national team level kids. So been around a little while and seen a few things, and I've traveled, I don't know, 8, 10 different countries around the world, looking at soccer, studying it, learning it. So I guess by most accounts, I'm an expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you coach or when you learn at all those different levels, yeah, I mean that definitely gives you that credit of an expert, especially now that you're in that recruiting process and helping athletes find that right fit. And that's definitely something I want to get into as we talk about that right fit in a little bit. But I want to start with asking you a bit about, what are some characteristics you see of a college athlete or a more of an elite athlete?
Well, I've thought about this in a lot of sports, but we talk about this in soccer specifically, but I believe it applies to every sport. There's 4 basic components that I can think of and that other experts can think of that make up an athlete. That's the technical ability of the player, the tactical understanding of whatever their sport is of that player, how well they apply their techniques to the tactical situations in that sport. So technical, tactical, then there's physical and mental. So, the physical piece is obviously broken down into a great number of components, from nutrition to strength and conditioning to genetics. People want to overlook genetics. You can't overlook genetics. I don't care if I had worked out literally 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, had eaten everything perfectly, had run and done everything that every expert told me to do, I would never beat Usain Bolt in a race. I can work out as much as I could work out more than he does. I could have worked out more than Lance Armstrong did. Whoever, I'm not going to beat them in a race. I don't have those genetic makeups. So it does play a component. What you're born with plays a component. So
Mhm.
technical, tactical, physical, and then mental. And we talk about mental strength a lot. As athletes, we hear that, be mentally strong, but people don't understand what that means. People don't understand how to improve their mental capacity. A lot of us don't want to accept responsibility for our own actions and how we behave and what we do. We want to leave it to something else, but all of those things lead to mental strength. And the best athletes in the world are as close to a 10 out of 10 in those 4 categories and all of their various subcategories as possible. So when I'm out looking for an athlete, I'm assessing those 4 categories the best I can: technical, tactical, physical, and mental.
Mm. I like that. I like the breaking that down into different sections too. It makes us I feel like too many times we focus on there's a million different things we have to focus on, but if we break it down into categories, it can really simplify that thought process.
It
Uh,
does for me. It helps. Yeah.
yeah. So what would you say are 3 of the biggest things you would consistently see from some of the top athletes, like even specific things like discipline or, even more specific, what are things you see the most with those more elite or higher level athletes?
Yeah. Look, it's. I find with the higher level athletes, not only can they set goals, but they can do everything on a daily basis that is necessary to achieve those goals including making sacrifices for things that are more comfortable or fun. So the elite athletes, they're missing things. I coached a young lady named Lindsay Dickerson, and you probably can't see the picture over there. Anyhow, she played for Stanford. She's holding a national championship trophy. At 10 years old, she said, "This is what I want. I want to play for the national team. I want a national championship trophy. I want to play for Stanford." At 10 years old, she just had a feeling what she wanted. And about 16 years old, she's at training, and she looks kind of bummed out one day. And it's like, "What's up?" After training, I said, "What's up?" And she said, "Yeah, nothing. Just junior prom. Gonna miss it. I'm gotta head off to the national team to Costa Rica. Da da da." And I said, "You can make this easier. You don't have to go to Stanford. You can go to Cal Berkeley. They'll still take you. You can make it easier, and you don't have to play in the national team. And then you can go to your prom." And anybody who knows the Cal Stanford rivalry knows that a family that from Stanford, a Stanford family, takes that as an insult. And I was just challenging her to make her understand that these are your choices that you're making, and you don't have to make these choices. You can make life easier for you. She said, "No, really, I'm not complaining. I just am kind of bummed I missed these things." Those are called sacrifices that we have to make, and they have consequences, you know? And as long as kids know that and understand that, then I think they can push themselves as hard as they want to push themselves. I think it's when the parents push them, which we see a little more on the women's side, unfortunately, more than the men's side. We see it on the men's side too, where parents are pushing their kids in a direction that the kids don't want to walk. They prefer not to walk that direction, or they prefer to straddle the line at least. Yeah, I can play sports, but it doesn't mean I'll have to play in college. It doesn't mean I have to be pro, and it doesn't mean I have to, right? So these psychological, these sociological components that surround sports they seep into how the mental piece of the game, right? A lot of I've heard it said before when they talk about the mental components of the game, talk about it as psychosocial, so psychological slash social slash environment, that you're in. A bunch of kids who want to play a sport at an elite level that are all hanging around each other, and all they do is talk about the game. All they do, "Did you see that game last night? Did you watch that game? Are you guys going to the game Saturday? Are you, those types of environments are really healthy, even though they're intense. The ones that aren't healthy is, are you going to watch, are you going to watch the game? Say, "Nah, I don't want to watch the game. Nah, I'm not that interested." Do you watch? "Nah, I'm not going to watch the World Cup. I'm not going to watch the European Championships. I don't want to watch Copa America. I don't want to watch the World. I'll watch the USA play in the World Cup, but I won't watch anybody else. I'm really not that interested." These are cues that the players are giving to their parents, that they don't really have a passion for this thing, but they use it. It's a hobby, right? It's a hobby. It's something that they do. I play a little baseball. I play a little soccer. I play a little swimming, a little bit of track, and a little bit of whatever. And then, but I happen to be better at soccer than I am at those other sports. So therefore, the parents often look at it, soccer as then their pathway to playing in college, or to being in college, to being an elite athlete. It's like, yeah, but that's your dream, parents. It's not your kid's dream. Let your kid do what they want to do. Just ask them. They'll tell you. They'll demonstrate every single day what's important to them. When your neighbor is complaining because your kid's smacking the ball against the garage door and making too much noise every day and bothering them, that's a good sign that your kid's obsessed. When your kid is juggling, "Hey, let me show you a new trick that I just learned. I was looking on YouTube and I saw this new trick. Mom, Dad, let me show you." That's a good sign that your kid's obsessed with the sport. When your kid's taking off at 5 a.m. in the morning to go out on a jog at the school and go for a run, smack the ball against the wall before school starts, and then come back home, shower, comes back home, drags the ball out of the locker, more wall work, then goes off to work with a sports conditioning specialist, and then goes to training, and wants to see every game, and wants you to buy season tickets to the local MLS team or whatever, and is just obsessed with the game, constantly collecting baseball, baseball cards, but soccer cards, organizing them, memorizing all the players. And when your kid's doing things like that on their own, then you know that they're obsessed. Then you know that they're probably going to grow up to be a soccer coach.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my son's journey. That's what it was about. At 10 years old, he says, I want to play in England. I'm yeah, right.
Mhm.
Not complaining. I didn't say that out loud, but it's like, you're never going to. He played in England. He got a trial in the Bundesliga at FC Cologne. He was just not technically, he wasn't physically gifted enough to overcome that. Not being physically gifted. He just wasn't gifted enough. He was born with my genes. I'm sorry, he was cursed.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was. But parents need to look back, step back and look at this. And athletes need to look at themselves and have the courage. If athletes are listening to this, and hey, look, you know if it's not your passion. Every kid knows what their passions are. They know. Tell your parents. Tell your parents what your passions are. You'll be happier. In the long run, they'll be happy.
I like the honesty, like being honest with each other as parents to athletes and athletes to parents. I think it's really key to like be aware of those things. Cause yeah, like a lot of, I see, especially this in like American football and football, is the tendency to live through your child. And I mean, that's just because I'm around it, but I could see that being in any sport really. And, you know, you see those parents in the stands, usually you hear them in the stands, usually are those parents. Is maybe those athletes don't want that as much. But I also like that you touch on the, like, you know, I mean, even you didn't necessarily see your son doing that because of some of those genetic components, going and playing in England. But it's funny because I actually just had a former Olympian on the podcast. He was a swimmer for Uganda. And Uganda, you know, they're soccer and they're runners. And he was like, his teacher like told him to get his head out of water. And he was like secretly to himself, like, I'm going to go to the Olympics. Like he just, you know, part of that's that mental piece, like you talked about. I think is huge for sure. So what about when we talk about like athletes trying to find a good fit for college, what comes to mind? Like you often talk about finding the right fit. This is something I see a lot in your content is finding that right fit. Can you explain what that means and why it's so important for athletes to be aware of that?
Yeah, so much in the same way that I like to break down the components of the pillars of an athlete: technical, tactical, physical, and mental. We have to break down the components of what the right fit means. So, first thing is, can I afford this? Can we afford the school? I mean, there's no point in shopping for a Lamborghini if you're on a Honda budget. What's the point? Okay, you can pine unless you want to take out a big loan. If you want to take out $1,000 a month loan, you too can own a Lamborghini for $1,000 a month. And if that's what you want to do, then you can do that. But understand that you are going to, it's not going to get you to your destination any better. It might get you there a little faster, but it also might get you some tickets. I don't know. What are you going to do with this Lamborghini that you're spending, you know, $200,000 for? What are you going to do with this thing? Same thing with the school. You know, what's the point in getting a Harvard degree for liberal arts so that you can teach English? Right? You can take out a loan for it. It's fine, and that's what you want. That's great. And if you can pay for it and afford it, that's fine. I have no problem with people driving Lamborghinis. By the way, that's not. I don't think I have a problem with it. I just think it's odd that you go shopping for something that you can't afford. So you have to afford the school first. And look, if you don't have any money at all, junior college and a state school are going to be free for you. Dead out free. Won't cost you a penny. In fact, you probably make money. You will probably, at the end of the day, have more money coming into you than you do going out from the government if you truly can't afford any school at all. Okay? But then stop, you know, if you have a 3.5 GPA and a kid says, I want to play for Harvard and I have no money, you're not going to Harvard, no matter what you do, no matter who you are. You can't get in academically. You can't get in financially. What are you doing telling everybody that you're going to go to Princeton and Harvard and Yale and Stanford? And it's like your grades couldn't get you into those schools. So grades have to be there. So affordability has to be there. Grades have to be there. Don't think, oh, well, if I'm the best soccer player in the world, Stanford surely will take me. The coach will make exceptions. The school will want me. They will want me there. I mean, look who I am. I'm special. They will want me. This attitude is narcissistic and it's not realistic. And if you want to spend your time doing that, great. Go to the Stanford camp, They will tell you. They will walk up to you and tell you, I want you to play here if you're good enough. Then they will ask you your grades. And then, like Notre Dame did for me, they told me how much it was for my son. And I said, we can't afford it. And they said, well, thank you very much. It's not a problem. You can't afford $56,000 a year. You don't need to be here. Okay. And so it's knowing what you can afford, knowing what your grades are, and for Pete's sake, knowing what your abilities are. So many kids at Stanford camp has 2,000-3,000 kids a year going to their camp saying, I want to be at Stanford. And rarely, I don't know the stats, guarantee you they do not see a strange kid at their camp every single year that they've never met before that ends up being on that roster. I guarantee it doesn't happen every year. Might it happen once every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? It might happen. It's a super rare thing. It's a super rare thing that somebody walks up to an elite camp and then has never been seen before. Nobody knows who they are. It's just nothing. And then all of a sudden, you're playing at Stanford because you got discovered.
Not in this day and age.
I'm suppose there's people walking down the street on Hollywood Boulevard who somebody says, come be in my movie, and they become a worldwide phenomenal superstar. I'm sure it's happened. Probably not a great way to plan a career, just like buying lottery tickets is probably not a great way to plan your retirement.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to know that you can play at that school. How do I know? Look, if you're the 7th best player on your 6th place mid-level travel team, you're not going to Stanford. That's full of national team kids. She's on the England national team. She's on the U.S. national team. She's on the Norwegian national team. He's on this team. He's on that team. He was playing for, San Jose Earthquakes. He was playing for. That's who's filling those teams. And when nobody's ever heard of your 4th tier league youth team, and you're the 7th best player on your 6th place team in a league nobody's ever heard of, in an area that nobody ever recruits from, and then you're going to spend money to go to Stanford because you think you're good enough to play at Stanford, and then nobody approaches you, and then you go back a second year, and then you go, well, surely then Notre Dame will want me. What about North Carolina? What about Indiana? Surely one of these 30, and people go, well, make a list of all the schools that you want to go at and all the schools you want to play to. Make a list. I want Stanford. I want to go to North Carolina. I want to go to all these schools. I mean, I truly do. I truly want to coach at Arsenal. I will never coach at Arsenal. Okay? Just because I want something doesn't mean I'm going to get it. So I got to know that I can play there. I got to know that I am good enough to play there. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but you need to get evaluated properly. And if you really need to know, go to their camp. And if they don't recruit you from their camp, know that probably everybody at that level is also not going to recruit you. Most likely. So if you go to the Cal camp and they don't recruit you, what are the odds Stanford and Santa Clara are going to like you? What are the odds Notre Dame are going to like you? What are the odds Indiana? And when you've been rejected from 2 or 3 camps, then it gives you a pattern, right? It gives you an idea. The marketplace will speak to athletes. When the community buzzes about an athlete, then it spreads to the state. When the state buzzes about an athlete, it spreads to the region. Once it gets to the region, the schools in that region will start to recruit that athlete. And once that happens, quite often the word will get out, and then schools nationally will start to recruit. Yeah. That's how it works. The marketplace speaks to where an athlete goes. So you got to get that piece sorted out. Then you have the social piece, right? So we have a girl who's one of the better players in the country. She's very, very, very good. She was on a full ride to UNLV. The Las Vegas community environment wasn't the right environment for her, right? Christian young lady, doesn't gamble, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't party, doesn't do any of that, not interested in any of that. So therefore, for her life, at this moment, Las Vegas was not the right choice for her. So now she's transferred to a Christian school back east, Lipscomb in Nashville, Tennessee. So she's still playing at the same level. The finances all worked out about the same, but just being in a Christian environment in a more conservative culture is a better fit for her. So does a school fit you socially? right? I had another girl from Ohio who very good player, wanted to be in New York, said LIU, Long Island University is where she wanted to be. I said, have you ever been there? Yeah, I've seen it, but have you ever lived there? I mean, moving from Ohio to Long Island is
Yeah.
like culture shock central. Anyway, bottom line is it didn't work out. It wasn't the right fit
Yeah.
for her. Back in Ohio at a Division III school, much happier socially, much happier soccer. Just everything's better. Everything's better. So
Yeah.
trying to figure out what makes you tick, and then some people tick better. Their engine runs better in the city. Some people engines runs better in the country.
Yeah.
What makes you tick? Where are you going to be happy? What are you going to do in your off time, in your downtime, in your injured time, in your whatever? What are you going to do? I mean, do you want to be there? It's
Mm.
important. And a lot of people overlook that. They say, well, I'll sacrifice for being at USC. I don't mind living in the ghetto in Los Angeles. If I can be at USC, doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And some people that's the case. And then other people that's not the case.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Don't go walking outside the gates. It's not really a safe neighborhood to go
Mhm.
cruising around outside the gates when you're not from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's not for everybody. So knowing socially what makes you fit. So we're just breaking it down into what can I afford? Can I get into the school? Can I play sport at that school? And then does it fit me socially? And then some kids have to be within 50 miles of home, period. They just aren't mature enough to be moving away from home yet. They haven't got it. And maybe they never will be. And maybe it's not even a maturity issue. Maybe it's just a social
Yeah.
issue where they have to be. Our family is near our family. That's what our family does. Okay, period.
Mhm.
That's not even a discussion. That's okay too. So then, no point in talking to Stanford if you live in Ohio. What's the point? You might as well stay in Ohio, go do what you can do there. But it also means now there's less choices. And if Ohio State's roster is full, then maybe you have to go to Tiffin. But I don't want to play D2. Well, then I don't know what to tell you because Ohio State doesn't want you, right? And Tiffin's a very good program, and maybe that's where you belong, or Akron, or wherever, whatever, right? Whatever the sport is, whatever you're looking for. If you live in Ohio, you need to be in Ohio, maybe Ohio, Pennsylvania, maybe that's all you get to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. And then other kids are very like, no, I can't wait to get out of the house. Can't wait to go stretch my legs and live on my own. This is going to be great. I want to be farther away from family. I want to stretch myself. I want to grow. I want to figure it out. That's okay. You have to know that, right? And the parents have to know that. Where is my kid likely to thrive? And you have to know, where am I likely to thrive, right? So we break it down into these components, and when you add them all together, you get the right fit.
Mm.
Okay. And not everything's perfect. And sometimes you don't get it right the first time. I've told you two stories where we got it wrong with our clients. They didn't listen to us, and maybe we weren't listening to them very well. Or maybe we didn't ask the right questions. I don't know. But when something's broken, you just got to fix it. You got to make it better. And I think that's what the transfer portal does. It helps make it easier, right, for kids to transfer schools when it's not the right fit without much animosity like there used to be. I mean, coaches used to, sometimes they're better players. They don't want to let them go, and they refuse to let them go. And athletic directors refuse to let them go. Then the kid has to appeal. That means you're almost going to court, right? It feels like you against them. Well, how is that going to work out? No matter what the answer is at the end, whether you get your transfer or not, how's that going to work out? You're going to end up leaving not like the transfer portal kind of eliminated that whole messy process, right? Made it easier for kids to just transfer. Some abuse that, by the way.
Yeah.
Some
I,
abuse it. We said kids transfer 3, 4, 5 times sometimes. So
yeah. I like that perspective because I feel like a lot of the opinions on the transfer portal are more like negative towards it because of the cultural or more of the like not really establishing like a culture, a unit. Like there's less of that team building. Like kind of high school kind of becomes the end of that like that team cohesiveness and that team culture. But at the same time, if you're the black sheep of the family sitting in that college, and you're stuck, like how do you kind of find that better opportunity? So I do like that perspective. I hadn't really thought about that.
well, I'm probably 80% negative on the transfer portal, and I'm probably 20% positive, or 75-25.
Mm.
Uh, I think that 25% of the kids or so are using the transfer portal in the proper manner in which it's meant to be used. And I think that the other 80% or 75% are abusing it. And I think I think coaches are abusing it. Coaches are using it as a cop out not to develop a player, just to be able to dump a player, bring in a new one, dump a player, bring in a new one, dump a player, bring in a new one. And coaches are just using it like, does this solve my problem? Does this solve my problem? Does this solve my problem? Look, once you do that for 2 or 3 years in a row, the problem is you.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is the coach. Once you do that for 2 you can do it 1 year to fix a short-term issue, right? They brought in this kid, turned out they were a raging alcoholic. They couldn't control themselves. 3 drunk driving incidences, can't be part of my team anymore. You need to go transfer. You need to leave our school. You need to leave our community. You're a problem. And then bring in a new kid from the portal, push a kid into the portal, bring in a new kid from the portal who's more experienced, who can help you right away, like that kid could, like the kid you just had to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good way to use it for coaches. But other coaches are using it as like, doesn't solve my problem, doesn't solve my problem, doesn't. And then they just keep on out, kid in, kid out, kid in. It's like, this is silly. You can't build a culture like that. You can't build a team like that. You have a team of mercenaries who are loyal to no one except themselves.
Yeah.
You can't win a national championship like that.
Yeah.
You just can't. And I want to see it done. If somebody says you can, let's show me. But every coach that I talk to that wins national championships says that's not how we do it. It's not how we do it. And even the coaches that aren't top 50s and top 100s that are consistently doing well year after year after year said that's not how we do it. You've got to have freshmen who are loyal to you and your school and that you develop. Yeah, you have to. You can mix in transfers. There's nothing wrong with that. It's going to be necessary at times. But it's always been that way. That part's never changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Like there's so much we can unpack there for sure. I do want to ask specifically when you were breaking down the different in terms of finding that right fit, you talk about talent a lot. And so like when it comes to our talent and abilities, basically, not just talent, 'cause talent's more like born, and then there's like abilities that you train, but basically how do you find that balance between like that natural giftedness or those abilities versus like when you look at somebody like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, who worked their butts off to like they were JV like ability in high school, worked their way up to varsity type of thing, and then they committed to that process. But how do you balance between that natural giftings versus like knowing how much you can grow?
Well, we don't know. First of all, let's just admit it. We in the sports world are terrible at looking at a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old and saying that this kid is talented and is going to make it. We're terrible at it. Okay. When you look at the pro academies over in England, so you look at Arsenal and Manchester United and Tottenham and Southampton, you look at all these pro academies over in England, and when you find out that like 0.7% of the kids who enter academy when they're like youth, end up playing pro, less than 1%, tells you they're not very good at spotting or identifying talent. And when you go MLS Next and when you go to all these other leagues around the world and you find out it's about the same, then it tells you we're just not very good at identifying and developing talent and what makes talent. And it's because of the psychological factor. It's not because we can't, we can line kids up and sprint and we can tell you who's faster than who. And we can have kids juggle and shoot and play and everything. And we can tell you who's better than who, okay, at these skills. And then we can watch kids play 11 aside and kids make decisions. And we can tell you who's better at making good decisions than who, okay? And the part that we can't tell you is what's going to happen when Michael Jordan gets cut from his freshman team. What's going to happen? We can tell you that 99% of the time the kid picks up a violin or goes and does art or goes and does track or does something else. You tell me I'm not good at it, I will leave. Very few people will say, screw you, let me show you. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to show you. And I'm going to show you why you're wrong. And I'm going to prove to you that you're wrong. And then the next year they get rejected and they said, I'm going to prove to you why they're wrong. And eventually it kicks in. But let's not say that Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant aren't freak athletes. See, that's the part people want to ignore. They use Michael Jordan as an example. Dude, he's a freak athlete. I've got a poster somewhere around here of him taking off from the halfway line. I mean, from the free throw line and slam dunking. From the free throw line. How many times in the history of the world of basketball have we seen that? In the history. How many guys could do that? Even the slam dunk contest today, how many guys do that, Nick? How many guys take off from the free throw line?
Can't say a lot. I don't personally watch it, but yeah.
Go YouTube it.
Yeah.
And you'll see Michael Jordan taking off from the free throw line and slam dunking. And then YouTube the last 2 or 3 contests and see how many guys do it. They want to spin, they want a 360, they want to through them. They can't do it. That's why they don't do it. Because they can't. Because he's a freak athlete. So it just takes men a little while longer to kick in sometimes. Men often don't stop growing till they're 22, 23 sometimes. So they continue to develop at 17, 18, 19, 20. Well, on the women's side, a lot of them stunt out at about 15, right? 14, 15, 16. Their growth gets stunted at that point. They can get stronger and they can improve on quickness and they can improve on those things, but they're not going to go from 5'3" to 6'3" between the ages of 15 and 22, where a man can.
Yeah.
You can grow a foot or more. Even when he's 18, 19, 20, I've seen kids grow 5 and 6 inches between 18 and 22 on the men's side. I've never seen that. I know it exists. Somebody's going to go, Don's an idiot. This one person in China had it happen to them, this one person, and therefore it's possible. Look, everything's possible. Everything's possible. It's just not the norm. And so it's more difficult to tell you who's going to be successful and who's not. But it usually comes down to the psychological and the cultural environment the player is in.
Yeah.
Right?
And I feel like part of that too is, finding that balance. This is something I've been reading a lot about, is finding that balance between setting a goal and like basing your identity on whether you reach that goal or not. So yeah, maybe you want to go to Stanford and you work, maybe at 10 you work towards that, but then you find out at say 16 or something that's just not a possibility with your abilities. But all of the hard work, all of that dedication that you put in, you can apply that to anything. So it's, I talk about like book I'm reading right now talks about setting standards that help you reach that goal. But even if you don't reach that goal, those standards elevate who you are as a person. And so those standards is what can open up the opportunity to something completely different. I mean, one of the athletes I worked with, she was a swimmer, and she switched her freshman year of high school, switched from swimming to basketball, and completely different. And she ended up, getting a D1. I think it's Chaminade in Hawaii. I forget what level that is.
D2 in Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah. So but she had all those, like you said, the psychology, she had those habits, she had all those things that she just applied to a new thing. And you see this with athletes all across the world of like very success, or maybe ones who were really successful or weren't successful, like didn't play long, but then they applied that success to something else. And now they're like impacting a whole different area, a whole new passion of theirs. So, yeah.
One of the oldest sayings that I've heard on this topic is, XYZ is something you do, it is not who you are. And then just insert your sport. So we used to tell our son, soccer is something you do, it's not who you are. How you treat people is who you are. That's what reveals how you are. So being a soccer player is something you do. Because my wife came to me one day and we both had this thought, and he was probably about 14, 15. She said, I'm really honestly concerned what happens if he doesn't make it. Because he puts so much into it. So we had to sit him down and have this talk multiple times on multiple occasions. And it did get through to him. And when the rejection came, when FC Cologne told him to go home, at the end of the day, when England told him to go home, At the end of the day, when Portland told him to go home, it did not destroy him. He understood he had value. He was bringing value to the world. He understood that beyond his ability to be an athlete. And that's very hard for a large majority of athletes to comprehend.
One, we're not taught those types of things. I mean, it's something that we're not like, from our parents or from whoever. We just, as a society, I feel like we don't really have a lot of those things that we ingrain in ourselves, especially nowadays where it's like everything's quick and it's really hard to build that resilience. It's really hard to build all those back end traits that help you overcome those down I wouldn't call them failures, but when you don't reach that goal or when that goal has to shift.
No, and it's okay to call them failures. Failures is how we learn. It's how
Yeah.
we can't pretend that failures don't exist by not using the word, and now suddenly failures don't exist because we refuse to use the word, Nick.
Yeah.
We should use the word. We should be honest. We should say, you failed at this, doing it this way. Now, if it's really important to you, change the way you do it and try it again.
Yes.
And then if it's really important to you, change what you're doing and try again. Now, if it's really important to you, change it and just keep on adapting and changing until you get it. It's the old Edison quote, I never failed. I only figured out 99 ways not to do it. But he did fail.
Yeah.
That didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. Not working is failing at that piece. It doesn't mean you're a failure. There is the difference. When we take a failing and we apply it to you and say it's your failure, you are a failure, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Failing is not the problem. I fail all the time. I make mistakes every single doggone day of my life. It's the definition of insanity, I think, that Descartes gave us, since that's like, I'm just not going to do the same thing over and over again and then expect the results to change. I'm going to change my methodology and I'm going to see if the results change. It's a scientific method. Try it again, observe the results, make an adaptation, try it again, observe the results, make an adaptation. That's how, because every athlete's different. Some kids come to you, Nick, and you might go, you really don't have a big problem here. You really don't. You might think it's a big problem, and then other kids come to you and go, oh man, you got massive issues.
Yeah.
You've got massive issues. But I mean, there's kids that come to us for help and we go, you don't need our help. And we refuse to help them because they don't need it and we're right. And I know for 1,000% I'm right. This kid does not need my help.
Yeah.
Okay. And then other kids are desperate for help and they really need the help and they're really going in the wrong direction. So it's just knowing that and being able to adapt. And some need a little, and some need a lot, and some need big adjustments, some need small adjustments. Everybody's different. And some kids, it's more psychological than it is technical, tactical, and physical. And some kids, it's more physical than it is mental and social. And some kids, it's, and everybody's different. But that's what a good coach is. A good coach can adapt. A good coach recognizes that all human beings are different. Everybody learns differently. Everybody's got a different set of motivations to them. And then that good coach knows how to make those adaptations because they have experience. And I've seen this before. And I've seen that before. And I'm going to try this that worked over there. And if it does time, it may or may not work again, by the way. But I've seen enough that I can make adaptations so that I can help these kids. That's what coaching is.
Yeah. I like that you two separated the failing and the failure, because that failure is like that becomes part of our identity essentially, and that's where like a lot of us, like me, like I struggle with fear of failure. Like that's something I've struggled with since I was little. It comes down to a lot of different things, but it's like Torrey Hunter, a baseball player, that said he said there isn't winners and losers, there's winners and learners, and so it's that you need to actually learn from those losses, not make that loss your identity essentially.
I might change it to there are winners and losers, but there are losers that learn and there are losers that quit. You did lose. You lost the game. Okay, you lost the game. What did you do wrong? What adjustments can you make? And does it hurt? Look, when you talk about losers, there's people that don't mind losing. They really don't mind it. They like winning. See, I have a fear of failure too, like you. And it hurts so bad that I will do everything in my power to figure out how to make that not happen again. And you end up becoming someone who wins a lot more than they lose. I think that fear of failure is healthy. I think it's super healthy. I
Yeah.
think it's unhealthy when it becomes obsessive and it locks you up from being able to make adjustments because you're so locked in and you're holding on to things too tight. You won't put yourself out there, so you stay introverted. You stay within a world in which you know you can be safe and you can win more than you can lose. You don't stretch yourself because you're scared of failing. That's when it becomes unhealthy. I think the fear of failure becomes healthy when you say, it hurts. And it hurts me so badly psychologically that I'm going to make adjustments to make sure that this happens as few times as possible in the part of my life where it matters to me. And for me, it was soccer, you know,
Mm.
and that was it. Right. For other people, it's other things, right? Their business, right? How your business works, how school, right? Schoolwork, right? I mean, you can eliminate a lot of the times where you didn't win or you didn't succeed the way you wanted to by preparing better, right? Right? You hear that proper preparation prevents piss poor performance, the 5 P's, right?
Hmm.
So it's true to a large extent, right? The more prepared I am, okay. Look, you sent me a list of questions. I didn't read them over. I think so far the interview is going okay. It's because I know my stuff. I don't
Yeah.
need to look. I didn't need to carry notes around with me for soccer. I didn't have like my lesson. I would have the organization of what I wanted to do next written down on a piece of paper. First warm up, then this exercise, then this, then this, then this. That was it. But there's no coaching points. It's no detailed lesson plan. Da, 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 da. It was when I was a younger coach.
Yeah.
But at the end, I may or may not have even planned out on a piece of paper. I just knew. I'd watch, I'd see what they were doing, I'd see what they were doing in game. I observed, I knew what the problems were, and I knew how to fix them. And then I would go and work on them within training, and we would fix the problems. It wasn't like I was taking a lot of notes. It wasn't like I was writing down, because I had been doing it for almost 30 years at that point in college, right? I've been doing it long enough. When I first started, it's different. I think the same thing is true for an athlete. When an athlete is learning to do something, you just got to keep adjusting and stay with it, and adjusting and stay with it, and adjusting, staying with it, and know that it's going to be hard. And hopefully, the adults in your life have enough wisdom to encourage you to chase what you're passionate about, not what they think is important for you.
Mm.
And then have enough wisdom to be able to espouse to players what you and I just talked about look, just because you didn't accomplish your goal doesn't mean that you are a failure as a human being. It means you failed to accomplish your goal. It's an isolated thing, right?
Mm.
Now, what are you going to do about it is going to determine what kind of a human being you're going to develop into. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
How are you going to solve the problem? And if you go, it's not important to me, I'm good with that. I told my kids, I don't care what you do. You're just not going to sit around the house and play video games all day. But other than that, I don't care what you do. If it's art, and my daughter got into dancing, and my son got into music, and my other son got into soccer, and they each got into their own thing, but they all started out the same way, playing soccer when they were 4 or 5, and swimming, and my son played basketball, and they played baseball. My daughter danced, and they all did their thing, right? Just like normal kids do.
Hmm.
And then they decided the path that they wanted to go. My
Yeah.
son said, I really like music. And he says, I want to pick up a bass. We helped him get a bass guitar, right? And he started teaching himself how to play bass guitar. By the time he's 16 years old, he's traveling Europe and on a record label and doing all kinds of amazing things because that was his passion. Not because we pushed him and not because he wanted something else other than chasing his passion, right?
Yeah.
So every kid, every person, that's my advice. Find what you're passionate about and chase it and then become good enough at that thing where people want to pay you for you to do it. That's the dream.
Mm.
I'm so passionate about this and I'm so good at this that people will actually pay me to do it. Look, I coached for nothing for 10 years.
Yeah.
My first college job was $750 a year. Let's just call it nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did that. My first not true. First one was a volunteer assistant. Then for the next 5 years, I was $750 a year.
Hmm.
Okay, so I was doing it for nothing because I loved it. It was my passion.
Hmm.
And then I became good enough at it that they actually paid me very good money to do what I was passionate about.
I
And
like that.
that's what I'm gonna encourage everybody that's looking for their path in life to try to do. There's people that are passionate about the show Friends. I mean, passionate about it. There's people, and there's somebody on the internet making money off of talking about Friends.
Yeah, so
Okay,
true.
so it's not that it's not possible because it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 really good social media clips from that. Like, when I share them with you, when I post and whatnot, there's going to be like just from that, like that last few minutes, there's a lot of good stuff from that like athletes, parents go back and listen to that. I do want to be sensitive of time, and I know that like I definitely want to get you back on the show because there's a few different things we got to unpack here too. But before we go though, I want to make sure listeners can get in touch with you and just follow you if anything and learn from, because like I said, you spit so many good things both on video but also on Twitter and whatnot. And so what's the easiest way to find you?
They can email me, Don at srusasoccer.com. They can find me on Twitter, Don_K_Williams, same on Insta. And then if you just bring up my name or Sports Recruiting USA on Facebook, they can find us there.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, you can find me. Yeah, people are free to reach out with any questions that they might have, Nick. I appreciate that.
Of course, yeah, and I'll attach those in the show notes. So, guys listening, whether it's on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple, check the caption below, and you guys will see all of his links. So, whatever social media platform you're on, you can check him out there and check out Sarusa there. But Don, thanks again for joining us today. Again, athletes and those listening, really focus on what are you passionate about. That was again big thing that we were stressing, and Don is stressing is find your passion and do everything you can to be good at that, whatever it is, whether it's coaching, whether it's football, basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever it is, outside of sports, pursue that passion and master your craft at it, and you're going to be a lot happier than if you don't. So again, listen, take that action, go follow Don, and then yeah, again, Don, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me on. It's been great. It's been fun.
Of course, yes. All right, we'll see you guys soon, and until next time, keep striving for greatness.